What's up, everyone? Today I'm finally getting around to do something that I've been wanting to do for a very long time now, and that is put together a video on how to find cheap flights. Ever since I posted one of the receipts from one of my flights from Detroit to New York last January, in which I was able to get my one-way ticket back to school for $24.99, I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, is this real? How are you able to do this? And can you help me do this? And my answer almost every time is yes, of course, but honestly, it takes a little bit of luck and a lot of paying attention. So without further ado, I want to just go on and show everyone exactly what I do each and every time I'm looking to book a trip or even just bored and looking to see where I can go. As a forewarning, this is not something that is super researched out and well planned. It is just what I do each and every time. This is something that you can Google and you can read pages and pages about all the tips and tricks and all the tools you can use. I want to keep it as simple as possible and just show you exactly the process that I use to find cheap flights in an effort to help show and teach you how to get a good deal on the next trip you want to take, or maybe help you plan an extra vacation. So without further ado, let's get after it. Without further ado, let's get into the quote-unquote magic behind finding a cheap flight. Now, anytime I get asked the question of how I find cheap flights or what I can recommend or what are some tips and tricks to finding cheap flights, I always recommend using Google Flights, which you can find just by simply Googling Google Flights or going to google.com/flights. And once you do so, you're going to find yourself on a page like this. The first thing you're going to want to do is load in your origin airport, which should fill in automatically if your browser has access to your location. And then if you are open to exploring destinations or just kind of getting an idea of where you might want to go, you can use this Explore Destinations tool to see the prices that it costs to get to any airport on the map. Now, right now it is showing the cheapest price for a 1-week trip in the next 6 months, but we can change that here just by going and selecting any of these months and selecting the duration we want to look for, whether it be a weekend or up to 2 weeks. So for instance, let's look at a weekend trip in May, and you'll see the prices are going to update and reflect in the map. And we can also set a price limit here to only show us flights, for instance, under $300. And you'll see anything over $300 is going to disappear from the map. So if you're completely open and flexible to where you might want to go, if you're looking to take an extra vacation, this could be a super helpful tool just to kind of get an idea of what airports you can get to for a certain price. The next tool that is super useful in regards to Google Flights is the calendar tool, which you can find by simply selecting any of the airports on the map or by just typing it in. I'm going to focus on New York because that's the airport I know most about and the trip I know most about taking. And from here, we're going to select up here and we're going to just reset our dates, and we can use the calendar to kind of get an idea of how far ahead we want to book our trip and when is the best time to go for the cheapest price. Right now, you'll see that it is showing prices for 7-day trips. You can change that here if you're looking just to take a weekend trip. So let's get a look at, let's keep it at a week. And you'll see, for instance, the prices are going to show for if you were to leave on that day and return in 7 days. So if we were to leave the 9th, we can fly back the 16th for $142. But you'll see that it also changes and shows you what it would cost you to return on any other day that you want to select. Let's go ahead and select that flight. Now, one thing that I actually just learned this year that is a super useful tip that can save you a lot of money is the fact that certain airlines allow you to save on an online fee by booking in person. I can confirm that this works for Spirit and a couple other airlines as well that you might be able to find if you just do a simple Google search of their policy. But for Spirit in particular, if you just go to the airport and go to the counter that you would go to check a bag and tell them you want to book a ticket, what I do is I just know what flight I want to take already. I've already looked it up online, so I know I want to take this 6 a.m. flight from Detroit to LaGuardia, and then I want to take the 9:46 return flight from LaGuardia to Detroit, and I know I can get that flight for $142 online, but when I go to the counter, I can expect to pay about $40 less. And if so, you book it right there. If not, you go ahead and book it online. I've never encountered that. Each time I've done it in person, I've saved $40 every single time. So that can be super useful, especially if you're booking for a group of people. Saving $40 round trip each ticket can really add up. Now, going back to the calendar aspect, we can make the calendar even more useful by utilizing the filters here of Google Flights. You see that we set our price filter when we were using Explore Destinations, and that stayed on. So let's eliminate that right now. And let's also look at the rest of them. So One tool that is actually new that I haven't used much, so I can't speak to how accurate it is, but you can filter in how many bags you're going to take on your trip. So if you're going to bring a carry-on, you can add that in here, and airlines that add a carry-on will add that to the price. Again, I can't speak to if it's accurate or not because I haven't used it, but that could really save you. For instance, if you're going to save $20 on flying Spirit as opposed to Delta, it wouldn't be worth it if you're bringing a carry-on because you're going to have to pay for that carry-on. So you might as well just pay the extra $20 for a Delta flight and get your free carry-on. So that's where I could see that filter being super useful. In terms of stops, if you want to eliminate any flights with layovers, you can do so here. If you want to eliminate any particular airlines, for instance, if you don't like flying Spirit, you are just a Spirit hater, you can get rid of that right here. For price, again, we can set a price limit here by just scrolling this down and setting our top dollar budget. Another super useful aspect or filter is this times filter, which allows you to eliminate flights that wouldn't fit for your schedule. So if you, for instance, can't leave until a certain time, you can change that here. If you need to arrive by a certain time, you can change that here. The connecting airports filter is a little bit silly, but if there's anything airport that you don't want to lay over in, you can eliminate that by using this filter right here. And then under more, you'll see that you can eliminate seeing separate tickets. What that means is that you can eliminate the fact that if it's the cheapest to fly Spirit to New York but Delta home, you could turn that off by clicking hide separate tickets. I wouldn't recommend that if you're looking for the cheapest flight, but if you're looking to fly one airline and rack up miles or loyalty points, that is where you can find that feature. Now, some other features in Google Flights that I don't particularly use too often but can be super useful are this price graph, which will show you what is the average price for the month or that day and kind of gives you an idea of whether you're getting a good deal or not. You can look at surrounding airports and what it costs to fly into them and their average price for nonstop and connecting flights. And to that point, another super useful tip for finding cheap flights is by including more nearby airports. We can do that super easily with Google Flights by going right up here. So if we're looking to fly into other airports near New York, by clicking show more nearby airports, we can see if it's cheaper to fly into any other airport nearby. For New York, if you just type in you want to go to New York City, it's always going to include the 3 major airports. But if we want to include more, rather than just click on the one, we want to click this plus button, and you'll see that it's already including these 3 in our price calendar. But if we want to include any more, we just select them here. We can select up to 5. And we can also do that for our origin airport as well. Just by clicking this little plus button and including more nearby airports. If you're flexible on where you can fly out of or fly into, that is something that can save you a lot of money. And then you'll see that now our trips will will show any combination for any of these airports that we've selected and will also reflect in this map. And one thing I can speak to is if you're looking to be a super budget traveler or you're a college student looking to take a trip, one thing I can recommend as an example, to get to New York City from Detroit, often it is a lot cheaper to fly into Philadelphia. And it is a simple 3-hour bus ride on a coach bus. There's plenty of bus services that do it for sometimes less than $10 each way. So if you're saving $100 on the flight, that could be well worth your 3-hour trip from the airport to the city if you're going to save a couple $100 and price is your most important factor. Another thing I can recommend is signing up for airline newsletters. You see here I got the Spirit newsletter, and they send it out almost every day with the deal of the day, which you can go ahead and view. These typically have a lot of restrictions, and you kind of got to get lucky with finding one that works for your schedule and your dates and even your destinations. But if you do so happen to get lucky and you're able to find that $24 flight, it can be super useful and can allow you to take a super cheap flight and get somewhere that you've been looking to go to. So that is definitely something you can look out for. And then another thing I can recommend, I'm going to include at the end of this video, is a little app I use called Hopper, which allows you to track prices and also gives you price alerts for whenever your price for your trip goes up or down. So hopefully it goes down, and it'll also let you know and kind of give you a prediction of when it thinks prices are going to start to increase and won't come back down, and whether you should hold off and keep waiting or whether you should buy as soon as possible. So that is something I'm going to include now, but this has been my main guide of Google Flights, which is my main tool of finding cheap flights, and I hope it will help you. I hope you've learned something. I can't guarantee that the first time you log on, you're going to be able to find some killer deal that you never thought imaginable. But if you constantly search the prices and stay alert and stay up to date with them, you can kind of track and get an idea of what's a good deal and when you should book. I recommend flying on Tuesdays and Wednesdays as much as possible. I know that's not always feasible, and then also flying or booking your trip rather 2 to 4 weeks in advance is typically the period that I've found best. Some people recommend 4 to 6. I have typically had my best luck 2 to 4 weeks out in my experience. And one last note in regards to constantly monitoring these flights and checking the prices on a daily or weekly basis if you're looking to take a trip in a couple months is the fact that there are often theories or rumors, if you are to look up on how to find cheap flights, the fact that certain browsers or airlines are able to track whether or how often you are searching to fly to a particular destination. So one way you can prevent that, if you're nervous from that happening, is by simply going to private browsing, which you can do in Google Chrome by simply going to File and starting a new incognito window. Or if you're in Safari, you can simply open a private browser. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. Just continue monitoring and stay on it. I can't confirm that that actually happens, but I wanted to address it just to make sure that I included it. There's definitely a strong opinion about it if you are reading about it online. I could definitely see there being some truth to it. In this day and age, we're always being tracked when we're searching online with all of our searches for marketing and whatnot. So if you're worried about your history being tracked and airlines jacking up the price on you, simply go into private browsing mode and prevent that from happening. I'm going to wrap up by showing a quick little walkthrough on Hopper, which should only be a minute or two. But this has been Google Flights. This is what I use when I'm taking a trip. I'm monitoring this almost daily and just kind of checking out prices, seeing what other airports you can fly into, and just being as flexible as possible to try and do everything in my power to find the cheapest flight as possible that also works for my schedule and at the end of the day is convenient. So this has been it. These are my tips and tricks. I hope they've helped. If they've helped, let me know. If you have any questions, you can always comment on this video. I'll get back to them as soon as possible. You can send me an email at jcamilla7@gmail.com and I'll get back to them and try to do my best to walk you through or clarify anything that I could have gone over too quickly or might have been confusing. But without further ado, let's get into Hopper real quick and let's wrap this up. Now let's take a quick look at this app called Hopper. What Hopper lets you do is put in your flight details. So let's use New York as well. New York again, if I could type. And then you pick your dates. So let's just say, let's pick a random week in June. Weekend. Thursday to Sunday. And now from here, Hopper's going to go to work. Now you see that Hopper tells us the current lowest price is $229 round trip. And what it's going to let us do is click this Watch Trip button. From here, we could either go ahead and view the flights and see what's available, but the useful part of the app is this price prediction point in which it tells us, as currently making this video on April 1st, it's saying until April 7th that it believes that the prices are going to vary and drop as low as $181. So it's saying essentially you should hold off a little bit. However, sometimes you'll see that it'll say you should book this now because we expect prices to rise by as much as a couple $100s. Now, the most useful part of the app is the fact that it is constantly monitoring once you click this watch feature of the app, and then it keeps all your watched flights right here and also gives you push notifications every time the price drops or the price goes up. So there's definitely some times where your flight can drop in a substantial amount and you should get right on and book it right away. So that's how Hopper can be extremely useful and can add on to Google Flights and make Google Flights even better.